Hey y'all.
I
You gotta
left.
go out? Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I left something on the desk that I thought I might need.
You need to go get it?
We can get it. We can get it for you. We're just starting now. Hey y'all, just come on in. We'll banter and stuff.
All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay. Hey y'all.
Hey
How y'all
everybody.
doing?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Let's see who we got coming in already. Coming in the room.
We have our panel, of course. SoundMind.
Yes. Very important topic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's struggling right about now.
Absolutely.
Everybody.
Absolutely. I think it'd be good for us to hit the grief part of a lost loved one and the people struggling with not being able to be around their families.
Because it's still a loss.
Yeah. I told my family I ain't coming to dinner. I'm staying home.
Look, don't bring me no apple pie. Well, you can bring it. Just leave it on the doorstep.
Right. Bring the food. Look.
You can bring the food. Just leave it right there. Right. Ring the doorbell, wave.
Right.
I'll wave you from inside the building.
Yep. I told my grandma I might go like early in the day to see her, my mask on, just to say hello, and you know.
You have to. You got to be careful. You got to be extra careful.
Absolutely.
You know? And I mean, people think that just because you're related, it means you can't spread it to each other.
Yeah. Yep.
Blood don't restrict you from getting COVID.
Absolutely. And I trust my family. You don't know what they do all the time.
You don't.
You don't know what they're doing all the time.
You don't.
Not one bit. Hi. Oh, I can't. I'm not gonna call her that in front of everybody. Hi, Mom Prescott. How are you? She's on.
My mommy's on the phone. Yes. My mommy's on the phone.
I was about to call her. Go with the nickname. We ain't gonna do that. Right.
Such a mama's girl.
Right. So y'all come on in. Please share as you're coming in. Please share.
Let me share also.
Hey, my leader. That's what I'm doing now. Hey, my leader. Stephanie. Danielle. Sister Sanders, how are you?
Good evening, everybody.
Y'all do us a favor and share. We're doing the same thing.
You're sharing it right now.
What's up, Tony? Rosie
Spencer, still making that chicken salad.
I need some more light.
Yeah. We in West Philadelphia is here.
Okay.
North Carolina.
Hey, E, how you doing? My niece is on.
What's up, Ebs? Yeah.
Ebenezer. I just gave her that name.
Mama LaBoo is on. What's up?
Mom LaBoo in the house. What? Right.
Hey, Pastor Switty. So y'all come on in.
Good evening to you, Michael Miller.
Yeah. Hey.
Joyce.
How you doing?
How are you?
Again, everyone, please share so we can hit the ground running on this important topic. And I think it's going to be a good one for all of us.
Yes.
Hey, Joyce. Hey, Charles, Thomas, and Shanera
Smith, hello.
Yes. Wife, how are you? Sherry.
Hi, Tiffers, Reverend Tiffers.
Yeah. Hey, Brother Leroy, how are you? So please, we're going to talk about grief in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And you lost your mother last month. Yeah.
Wow.
We're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. We're going to talk about the grief of the loss of a loved one, but also the grief that people are feeling this year due to the virus and the realness of without being with each other,
right?
And what that calls to. I was talking to somebody earlier those who are struggling with depression during this time because they're very social and it's hard for them being by themselves so much.
Wow.
And,
yeah, because you made a point, I think a month or so ago that, people that are extroverted, they're really struggling, because that's where they get their energy from.
Yeah, they're having a hard time.
So that's,
Yeah, homebodies. Me personally, I'm like, well, you feel it, but it's like I didn't really go out before the pandemic,
right?
But
right,
just other struggles involved too, though. So
yeah. But I think it's one thing to be home because you want to, and another thing to be home
because you have to, right? You're forced to. Yeah. And the folks that got family, they tired of being around their family all the time.
Yep.
The ones that don't have family in the house, they're like, I wish I had somebody around. It's
Yeah.
so talking through all
Everybody's
that.
going through a lot.
Yeah. So y'all please share so we can get rocking and rolling. And Bishop, how you doing?
I'm all right. How's everybody?
I'm good.
We sitting there ranting and raving, and when you came
All
back,
right.
in,
No, it's all right. Y'all go ahead, do your thing.
that's one thing I love about you. You ain't insecure about none of that stuff. You're like,
No,
let's
no.
just roll. Let's roll.
Let's just roll.
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
It'd be all right.
Yeah, I ain't gotta do all the talking. Let's just
Uh-uh.
yeah.
You share the spotlight, Bishop.
Right.
You're not insecure, Bishop.
Right.
Never have been.
Allison is very depressing. It's a hard situation.
Yeah.
With it being this long.
Yep, and I think especially when you watch the news, you ready to just hold hands and jump off the bridge.
Well, that's why you can't
You meditate on it. No. I watch the news enough to find out what's going on, and then I turn it off.
Yeah. All right. If y'all ready to rock and roll, if y'all don't mind, I jump in on the deep end. Is that okay? Or y'all want to go in shallow? Okay.
We could go deep.
So I'll start off very honest. Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday because I would always go down south for the most part and see my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Once my grandfather died, it stopped being one of my favorite holidays.
Okay.
And then it's hard now because I haven't seen my grandmother in a year and some change. And, she's 80-some years old. So first, I don't want to go down there and expose anything just in case. And she's like, y'all don't come down here till this thing is over, which I'm all cool for. So Thanksgiving this year is added because I'm used to seeing somebody that I no longer can see. Mm-hmm. And then somebody that's alive that I can see, I can't go see her now. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and act like I'm totally okay with it. And I'm sure there are a lot of us that are watching now that as we get into the Thanksgiving holiday and Christmas holiday, this is a part one of, we're going to have part two in December. And we have people in the comments talking about how dealing with the grief of the loss of a loved one or the changing of a relationship and how the holidays bring all that up.
Right.
And the thing I learned was the reason why Thanksgiving was so great for me was because of the person that was there I saw on Thanksgiving. So I can't get that normal back because I was telling myself, I wish I can get that same thing back. And I can't get it back because it was tied to a person.
Right.
So now I have to learn a whole new norm and adjust to make it the best Thanksgiving it can be in the situation that I'm in.
Right.
That makes sense. So if I can launch it off there, I would love to hear you guys kind of jump in and kind of help the people on dealing with grief and things that come up during the holiday time.
For me, I have just had to be honest with myself. As you guys know, my brother passed away in January, and I've had to be honest with myself and just accept the fact that from day to day, you don't know how you're going to feel. You don't know where the emotions, when it's going to hit you. And I've just had to accept that. The holidays make it bad for me because my brother loved to eat. He was always one of those, what y'all fixing, which will we going to eat. So I'm just kind of accepting the fact that it's not going to be okay until it's okay. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Bishop, would you love to help us out?
Well, I'll back up to Pastor Nick. And I think some people, what this COVID has done is help to minimize another emotion that comes up when, like in your situation, Pastor Nick, with your grandfather, in my situation with my grandmother, what I found was a real emotion I found that I had to be intentional about going to see my grandmother because I discovered one day that I was afraid to feel the same way I felt for my mom. So I found myself not enthusiastic about going. Now, COVID has helped in this way. it is not that you don't want to see your grandma.
I do.
But there is sometimes a reluctance to go. It's like you want to see them, but you don't want to go through losing another one.
Mhm.
Yeah, and COVID has kind of helped in that way. I think the other thing that's really weird is that addressing what Reverend is talking about is that this new norm is what I call it. This new normal will always be strange. And I think part of us grieving, I know part of us grieving, is searching for our normal again.
Yeah.
Grief is actually an emotional search to reclaim what we lost.
Yeah.
So it's a weird sensation, and it's weird because nothing prepares you for it.
Mm-hmm.
And spiritual people have to understand that for us, grief is a gift.
Yeah.
But it does not eliminate the fact that we grieve and mourn.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't mourn like other people do, because most people mourn with a hopelessness.
Yeah.
We mourn with a hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that makes our mourning strong. But I think that, especially during the only reason it's so intense during the holiday season is because that's a gathering time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And most of your traditions, y'all, are really built around a table.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not only a spiritual principle, but it's a natural thing. We build around tables, and holidays represent tables,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
packed with food, and talking trash and laughing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when a person is moved from that setting, it causes more of an emotional shift than we anticipated while the person was alive.
Yeah.
So their absence all of a sudden reveals the true value to us
Right.
of when they were present.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up about how God gives us the gift of grief.
Mm-hmm.
Because historically, I remember being in funerals and hearing people say to the family, stop all that crying. The person's with God and we're here to celebrate.
Dumbest statement I've ever heard in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And these were church leaders that said this to people.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if it happened to them and their family, would they want to hear the same exact thing?
Well,
with many of them, it did happen.
Yep.
And they are instructing out of their own unresolved grief.
that's what
Okay.
I was gonna say.
Okay.
I think they're just putting a happy face on it because that's what they've been taught growing up. Get over it. He's in a better place. She's in a better place. So you walk around with this facade like you're okay because you've been taught, if you feeling bad about it, you ain't got no faith.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. The only person feeling better about the better place is the one that went there. The people that got left here are not
Exactly.
feeling good about the better place.
Right.
Right.
So we're teaching people to actually cut. Every grief process is personal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And time is involved in that process.
Right.
But what Christians used to do, or at least maybe they still do, but we don't do it. We try to force you into a cycle of time that we're comfortable with.
Right.
While you're dealing with your grief.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't like you acting that way around me.
Wow.
Right.
So I need you to shorten your process so I feel better.
Wow. Jeez.
But Bishop, I think the flip side to that too is the person that's grieving also sometimes feels like I should be over this by now.
Because it's pressure to be over it.
Yep. Yeah.
But I mean, I think sometimes that's pressure coming from within is what I'm saying, not from without.
But if you look at it, I agree with you. But if you look at it, it's peer pressure.
It came from somewhere else. Yeah.
It's peer pressure, and it's spiritual pressure that we've been taught incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think you come up with it on your own. There has to be this expectation for you to say to yourself, am I getting over this fast enough? You know, you and I know people that think they're not recovering fast and they're 30 days out from the death.
Right.
That's not an internal, I thought it was an internal expectation, but it's an internal expectation that is born of the expectation or the words of other people.
Okay. So how would you instruct somebody that's very emotional during, of course, the time of grief? How would you teach them or instruct them or advise them to lower their expectation?
I tell them to cry when they need to and be strong when they need to. And I tell them what you're trying to do is conquer too much time.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is conquer the next moment. And those moments will add up. Most people try to conquer the week, conquer the month, you know, but the next moment is what you want to conquer.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to say, okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to be okay this week. No, I'm okay in this for this time that I'm in. I feel good. I don't know what the next hour, the next day is going to bring.
Yeah, you can't do it. And I think the grief during the holidays, and this is going to sound a little strange, is a unusual emotion attached to expectation that the person will be here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not logical, but I start to grieve because I want them here.
Yep.
And emotionally, it gets to the point where, you know, it's almost like an expectation that perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps they'll show up, you know, even though we've gone through the process, our heart still wants them to be there.
Yep.
You know, so it's, but if not for that grief, man, and most people don't understand that the first step of grief is the shock.
Yep. But
in the shock is the denial.
Mm-hmm.
This can't be happening to me. It can't be happening to them. They're not passing away. I mean, it's that whole grief thing starts out with shock.
Yep.
And oftentimes denial.
Yeah, that's true. I remember, so we try to chop this up. So we got be real about your feelings.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Conquer each moment.
That's right.
Those you taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
Be honest about how you feel. Conquer each moment. I remember my grandfather died in October. And then we went down to see my grandma for Thanksgiving because it was all of our first Thanksgiving without him.
Sure.
And I remember driving to Virginia and I felt this feeling come over me like, yo, let's turn around and go home.
Absolutely.
And I was like, I'm like, why am I feeling this? I'm like,
absolutely.
Close, like North Carolina. Absolutely. I was like, I don't want to go. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? And then it finally clicked when we got to South Carolina. I was like, boy, you don't want to deal with what the reality of what you're going to find. Internally, it was trying to get the message. And like you said, had to be real about how I felt. And you know what was crazy? I think it was last year at my uncle's in North Carolina. I walk into his house. I see an old man in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And something to me lights up like, yo, he's here.
Yep.
And I was like, wait a minute. He's not here. And I walked, I was like, it's not him. And it sounded so crazy. I'm like, bruh, don't you know the reality of it? But I don't know what happened.
That grief is a search for the person that we've lost.
Yes. 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 That was so crazy.
It's so much so, it can be an article of clothing that you'll want to touch again, or step into the room where they used to live, or something familiar is a search for them.
Yeah.
And but I think that's all necessary.
I was going to say all of those are good things to help you.
But if you don't know that, you'll try to fight it.
Yes.
I just feel for the people that don't naturally. Some people are not criers. Some people are not very emotional. And I feel, especially during the season, I feel bad for people that aren't used to expressing themselves emotionally and trying to deal with the grief. And they're already not the person that, emotes like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but guess what? I think we're used to having conversations around this subject, but I'm not sure we're used to having dialogue about it.
Explain that.
Well, conversation is almost like, in many categories and many subjects, is almost like a play in which we are reciting well-rehearsed lines.
Hmm.
We normally approach things from a I know what to say point of view.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But we don't have dialogue. Dialogue being I have to present my vulnerability to have a dialogue about a thing. Most people don't have dialogue about grief. They have conversations, especially spiritual folk.
That's true.
You know, my faith is strong.
Mm-hmm.
I got the joy of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got so much BS we carry with us. You know, that the pressure is to give the impression that you're doing better than you really are.
Yeah. Yep. In line the whole time.
That BS was belief system. Don't y'all put up on it.
Right.
I'm going to say the police system. Yeah.
Don't y'all put up there Bishop cussing now.
Right.
But that all goes back to how we were taught in church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when people walk up to you and say, you know, he's in a better place and, you know, you'll be all right. You almost want to spit in their eye. You should don't say nothing.
I don't defend that. You know, even today, I will still say, I understand that, but I want her here with me now, whole and healthy.
Yes, sir.
That's the real of it.
Yep.
You know, I never want to give the impression that I don't want to hear.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I remember one time somebody in my family passed away. I wasn't that close to the person, but you announced it. And I remember after service, somebody walked up to me and said, Pastor Nick, I'm so sad for your loss. Can I ask you a question real quick? So-and-so. Now, that showed me a lot.
Yes, sir.
A whole lot.
Yes, sir.
Where people expect you to be on all the time, no matter what goes on in your life. I was like, and I literally was looking at her like, are you serious right now?
That's just plain old trifling.
I was like, yo.
Very common though.
Yeah, it is.
And I think too, when you are considered a strong person, people that all goes into the people think you don't need anything.
Yeah.
You know, I know you lost somebody, but you're going to get over it because I got a question.
And those of us in the faith have to be careful, especially those of us in leadership, because the people expect us to mourn like professionals rather than relatives.
Yep.
Right.
You know, and if you try to fulfill that and mourn like a professional, I think you end up damaging yourself down the road.
Absolutely. We have a question from Stephanie. Said, she's talking just in general. How can someone tell me how to grieve? I'm still grieving over my dad. He passed right in front of my face.
Wow.
Last January. Grandson passed away this year in May. I still cry like I'm crazy. Some people are still telling her to, you know,
that's what I'm saying.
Try to dictate how she's supposed to grieve.
That is totally appropriate. And here's the other piece. If you were really committed, had a good relationship with whoever, you're going to do what I call pancaking. You're going to be all right at 8 o'clock and feel crazy at 8:05. Flip back at 8:15, you're fine. 8:30, you're off again. You know, it was years before my tears were not right beneath the surface of my persona every day. Now they have to be either stimulated by something I see or I have to think on a thing too long and it's going to help somebody. Or I say what I'm thinking out loud. If I think I miss her, I'm usually okay. But if I say it out loud, it's over.
It's going.
I made the mistake and said it out loud at 30,000 feet. And man, did I give them a floor show on that plane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cried like a baby. Flight attendants came. The lady sitting next to me was patting me. They thought I was just coming from the funeral.
Yeah.
My mother had been dead 9 years.
Wow.
You know, so
sorry.
Tears are appropriate.
Yeah.
Tears are appropriate, and they don't ask for permission to come for a long time.
Right.
And that answers one of the questions somebody asked. Well, how long should you grieve? And there really is no timetable for it. Right?
Everybody's different. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
There's a difference between paralyzing grief, and functioning grief. You can grieve and still go to work and still do your job and still do your function, but you feel different because there's a different weight on you.
Yeah, that's true.
But do you think that people that have paralyzing grief haven't gone through the grief process in a healthy way?
It's possible. They're not allowing themselves to feel pain, and some people don't allow themselves to feel guilty.
Okay.
Because most people go through the guilt phase. What could I have done for this not to happen? What did I miss? What could I have done? Is there another doctor I could have called? You wonder if there was something you could have done. That's the guilt phase, which actually comes right after the shock and denial phase.
Yeah.
Right.
So you got shock and denial, then you got the pain that you feel, literally the pain that you feel, because your heart hurts, and then you got guilt going on with that. So if you name those four things, shock, denial, pain, and guilt, if you don't feel crazy, I don't think you're a human being.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah, you're supposed to feel like inside is upside down.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you think there's a difference in how you grieve if, let's just say, you had a parent that you weren't that close with versus one that you were close with? Do you think there's a difference in how you grieve in those two different situations?
Absolutely. Simply stated, you grieve for what could have been versus grieving for what was.
Yeah.
So I'm grieving in a good situation, I'm grieving for what was. In a bad situation, I'm grieving for what should have been or could have been.
Right. Right.
Okay. So we got a question that says, at what point do you seek help when it's been some time and you're still unable to function? So if that paralyzed person's been like that for years, when do you get the real help?
I think most people, and I'm not tooting our horn, but most people that have not had the benefit of the way we teach how to deal with this thing need some help. Because I can tell you when I am at a pastor's conference, and invariably it'll come up about funerals or parents dying or things like that, I can tell you that what I hear are the things that have not helped as long as I've known church. So that you're talking in the last 65 years, I've heard the same things over and over as it relates to death and grieving in the African American church. I don't know what happens anywhere else. But so when I'm talking to people now, they are just amazed at what we see biblically as the way to navigate this very, very difficult place in life. So many people just haven't had the benefit of the word we've gotten on this subject. And most people they don't do this subject.
No.
Yeah. They don't know how to. Have you guys been there before? I know in my life sometimes where if you got questions, type them in. We got two. We're going to jump up real quick.
There's one from Kevin English that might help people.
Yeah. Have you found out that this will help probably with Kevin's too? One day you'll be mad, one day disappointed, one day, and you think you're angry, but it's really just your grief talking to you.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like you misinterpret the feeling.
Oh yeah.
And we don't realize the grief is what's fueling the anger, the disappointment.
Absolutely.
We misdiagnose ourselves, put it that way.
Absolutely. Because after you finish going through shock and denial and the pain and the guilt comes, the next thing is anger.
Yes.
The next thing is, and I woke up, didn't know what I was mad at. I was mad.
Right.
You're just mad because the sun is out.
Right.
I was pissed off because I woke up,
That is so true.
Oh man.
So Kevin wants to know, how do you deal with the frustration of people thinking that you're fine because you're not wearing what you're going through and not receiving checkups because you're perceived to be strong?
Yep.
Yeah. I think, and this is no slight, this is no shade, but I found this is a reality. When most people ask you how you're feeling,
Mhm.
they really don't want to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you start telling them, they immediately have something else to do.
Wow.
Your grief makes others uncomfortable. And if you tell a lie and say, I'm fine, they are released from asking you anymore.
Mhm.
And most people do lie and say, I'm fine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But we've
Yeah.
taught our people, don't ask them that question.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you doing as well as can be expected?
Yeah.
I'm just saying a hug pre-pandemic. A
Yeah.
hug goes a long way.
Yeah.
Sometimes you ain't got to say nothing.
Sometimes presence is what you need to do. Talk,
Yep.
help,
Yes.
just be there.
Yep.
Yeah. Because something you said before, some of this stuff doesn't make sense to us emotionally. Or is it emotionally or psychologically? But you're trying to rationalize and there's no ration to it, really.
And especially if you really, you really believed and had faith that God was going to, bring your loved one through.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's a whole nother set of things to deal with.
Well, yeah, because you got to deal with God saying no at a critical time.
Right.
You have to deal with the fact that you prayed probably more passionately than you ever prayed before, and God still said no. And one of the fruits of grief, and that's maybe the end of the conversation, is acceptance of God's will.
Yeah.
But acceptance is the last thing that comes.
Mm-hmm.
Because acceptance and hope usually show up together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you think sometimes you go through all those steps and then go back to step
Absolutely.
1, 3? I mean, I think people think it's supposed to be a cute
Mm-mm.
order and then, okay, I'm done. But
Mm-mm.
sometimes you go from 1 to 3 to 6 to 1, then you at 3 forever. It's just,
Yeah.
you can't call it.
Because after you get mad and you start trying to bargain with God and bargain with yourself, usually the depression comes, and oftentimes it's the first time a real depression has ever been dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And the depression comes from the fact that you don't have an experience living without this person.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the deal.
Yep.
No experience at all living without that person.
Yep. Yeah. When you're supposed to have the appropriate response. I remember going back to what Pastor said about the faith part. I remember years ago, we were in church in Delaware. You said faith believes that whatever God decides is true. And when my grandfather died, that's when it really clicked for me.
Wow.
That faith is also acceptance of God's will, whether you like it or not. We love the faith that changes. There's a whole lot of scripture about a faith that accepts that this is what God's decision. I have to accept it, and God still calls that faith.
Right.
And David displayed that, I think, in absolutely amazing ways.
Yeah.
When they come and tell him the child is dead, he gets up off the floor and reacts in such a way that his servants think he's lost his mind, because he starts taking care of himself again.
Yep. So we had a question from Joyce. How can you help your child through the grieving process when you're grieving as well? It's a good question.
That's a very good question.
Yeah. I think that it is number one, you can't speak in complicated terms to the child about your own grief. The second thing you have to do is get the child talking to you so you can hear the level of maturity in their grief, how they articulate their grief. And then once you get an idea of how they're functioning, then you have a conversation with them on their level. So it's a matter of reading the child based on what the child is saying. Now, what's amazing about this is part of a parent's grief is healed as he or she ministers to her own child. Because now, maybe for the first time in your life, you're ministering to someone out of a place of knowledge and experience and not just knowledge.
Yeah.
You can read your Bible all day long, but if you forget how God saved you, your witness is not nearly as powerful.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Absolutely. That's good. And we had another one. What do you say about grieving through your dreams?
I think it's normal.
Yeah.
I think it's normal. I think I don't know what you guys have done, but I wake up crying when I've had one of those dreams. Pillow all wet, nose running, whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ways that God releases the pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello, my nephew carries his mother's ashes around in a container.
Mm-hmm.
What can or should be done, if anything, to help him?
Nothing.
Yeah.
That's how he's dealing with it.
He'll put him down when he feels like it.
Yeah.
He'll put him down.
We had another one. Is it normal that you want to sometimes ignore the things that remind you of your loved ones?
You can not only ignore those things, but you can find yourself not going around certain people that remind you of.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can get back to the ashes, this is going to be sensitive.
Mm.
The resolution that comes with a traditional funeral is often missed with a cremation.
Mm.
So there's a resolution that is often missed when there's a cremation.
Because you don't see the actual body.
You don't see them, and the closure, if I can use that word, and I'm not being funny, is not there.
Right.
So you say goodbye to them in another form.
Right.
Yeah.
Funny story. I remember when an uncle of mine insisted on being cremated, and so he wanted his ashes poured out in Atlantic City, and so I go pick up the aunt, and we're heading to Atlantic City, and she tired of riding, and I'm tired of riding, and we decide, well, we're gonna come back to Philly and go down to East River Drive and do the deed at the river. So I'm looking for her to go, go do it. No, she want me to do it. So I carried the urn down to the edge of the water. Well, I opened up the urn and I started pouring the ashes out on the lake, on the water, and the wind blew. My uncle was all in my hair. He was all in my clothes. He was all over my shoes.
God, no.
And so I was done then. So I just poured out the rest of them and came up back to the car. And she's not laughing. I was laughing, and I had some rags in the car, so I had to brush my hair. I wiped my face down.
Oh my God.
Oh Lord, have mercy on my soul. True
That's
story.
crazy.
True story.
Oh my God.
That's crazy. That didn't go well.
True story. I said, you'll never get me to do that for you again.
Right.
Never.
Right.
I know that's right. Never again.
No.
Man.
Forget about that.
Oh Lord.
So we had a question. Should you feel guilty being a widow, falling in love 2 years after a marriage of 39 years? For 39 years.
Guilty?
Yeah.
I guess you would have to ask yourself why. And is it more of a desire to be with the person and not be alone, which is a lot of widowers do that? Or if something, or did something about the relationship, was there a struggle during the years and trying to recapture something? I mean, it's more than this brief conversation, but there are reasons that happens. And sometimes it's a lot of times, it's a matter of not wanting to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that comfort feels like a type of love.
Mm.
39 years is a long time to be with the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And again, 39 years, you usually don't have any experience living without them.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of widowers that I have counseled, men and women, just did not want to be by themselves.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Gail Lee, can you make your question a little more concise for us real quick? We'll put it up. I'm not trying to be shady. I just need to, just a little more concise if you can. Pastor Swinney asks, how do you handle your own grief when trying to be strong for those around you in their grief?
Private moments.
Yep.
Private moments. You have to, your car becomes a great place to let it out.
Mm-hmm.
Your office becomes a great place to let it out. Walking, those private moments are really important. Really important.
So you don't think are you saying you shouldn't grieve around strong people, shouldn't grieve around other people that are grieving?
I'm saying that there are times in the process for other people, like children and all, that we're required to be strong. I know a guy who lost a child, and his dad was with him at the house, and he was walking out of the house with his father, talking about how he just couldn't take it at all. And all that. His father grabbed him by the shoulders and said the N-word, said a cuss word, and said, you better straighten up. And this guy said he went out the house, bent over. He went back in the house standing straight up.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you know, you got your grief, but you got people in the house that are dependent on it.
Yeah.
And that's as part of any rock in the family, any leader of the family finds himself with that responsibility.
Yeah.
So that can be male or female.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can I throw this out there to you? What about those people who are in those leadership roles in their families, church, business, whatever, dealing with it's not fair because I have to be strong for everybody else.
Yeah.
How do you help people manage that and understand that it's not supposed to be fair if you're a leader? If I can say it, is that appropriate to say?
I think you're right. I think the balance is this. You need one or two people in your circle who also see you as a human being.
Right.
Because most people think you react to the death of a loved one or the loss of a career or the losing of a business with your anointing.
Right.
But you don't react with your gift and your anointing. You react with your humanity.
Right.
Tempered by the Spirit of God.
Right.
So those that love us sometimes forget we're humans. So you need someone sometimes other than, because watch this, they forget it because they need you to be strong because they can't be strong for you.
Yeah.
And that feels lonely.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. We had another question. How do you handle the grief of losing someone, not through death, but divorce and separation?
It's the same grief process.
Okay.
Same grief. It's shock. It's denial. How could they? It's disbelief. You get numb. You know, it's pain. It's some guilt. What did I do? You get pissed off. And then you think about maybe if I'd done this, you start bargaining.
Yeah.
You know? And then you get depressed. Yeah. But the depression is the turning point.
You wouldn't think that.
No, it's counterintuitive.
Yeah,
the depression is the turning point. Why? Because you can't go much lower than the basement.
Right.
You got to come back up the stairs.
Right.
And I stress stairs. Mm-hmm. There's not an elevator between those floors.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so Gail had the you had something. Go ahead, Pastor.
Yes, I was going to say, so you lose a loved one, and some people lose a loved one. They had a relationship. They treated them right. Mm-hmm. How would you advise people to deal with people that they've lost, that they mistreated the whole time they were alive?
That's some heavy guilt. It is guilt that you cannot have the conversation with the person to resolve. If you're a person of faith, you have to go to God and ask him for forgiveness. But the other thing that has to happen is you have to commit that you will never treat another loved one that way again. And unfortunately, most people are so toxic, they're not that strong.
Right.
So they'll start to compensate in other ways. And it can show up in some kind of emotional disturbance within people.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see them get, if they were strange, they get a little more strange. Or if they were off, they're a little more off. So they used to lean all the time, but they're actually tilted now. So it's one of those things where if God does not get in that thing and help you forgive them, and you don't change your behavior, you will continue the behavior that's fueling the guilt. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, that did.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna wrap Gail's question. Her parents, her dad was a bishop, was a presiding bishop. The mother passed away. Her siblings passed away, and then her dad just recently passed away also. And she's wondering, why would God do all of that stuff to lose her parents, her siblings, all around, I guess around the same time frame. They're serving the church, they're serving God. Why would these things happen?
It is not uncommon for people to have been together that long to have no will to live a new normal. You would be amazed at the number of people that have been together 40, 50, 60 years who die within days of each other.
Yep.
It is the actual literal broken heart. Most people think broken heart is a concept. Broken heart is a real thing. There's something that happens anatomically that doctors identify as a broken heart. And long-term spouses often don't want to live without the other one, and they normally pass away from the broken heart within years. So it's not that God allows them to go. He allows them to go. My aunt has friends who, when the one died, they said they're not going to take this, and died within a week.
Wow.
Jeez.
So it's just, and sometimes the events happen in succession that we wonder why God has pulled a person out of this world. And oftentimes we don't find out later why God did it like he did it. Like when 2/3 of a family pass away over a period of months or years. And we don't understand until later on. We look back and see, okay, that's why the Lord took them then. Some kind of event comes along that they would not have been able to tolerate. And God moves them out of, moves them up with him rather than leaving them here to go through a thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Now that doesn't help you. That doesn't help you accept it any better.
Yeah.
But it does. But it does help to know it.
Yeah.
And then you're back to that faith thing you talked about.
Yeah. I think the thing I love about our church, our funerals are different because it's not just the historical, just preach the gospel.
No.
Right.
I don't think you help the family when you just preach the gospel and don't teach how the gospel helps them in the mourning process.
I think it's malpractice, and I think it's been practiced by most for the last 200 years.
Yep. Malpractice.
Yeah, it's malpractice.
Yeah. That's a perfect word for it.
It is spiritual malpractice.
Yeah.
Because you sit there like you ain't say not one thing to help this grieving family.
That's a tradition.
Nothing.
That's a preaching tradition.
Yeah.
But, and this is no shade, you can't preach what you can't see.
That's true. Yep.
So if you can't see the event and what led up to it in the word, you have a hard time addressing the situation.
So you don't think it's just common sense?
No,
Okay.
no. I believe you have to have an anointing for. You have to have a revelational gift to see people's lives in the Word of God. But here's what's so great: Jesus taught parables based on common things. But some of us can't see those common things as example in people's lives that'll trigger revelation. This is what I need to preach.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you have a great sermon, but it's irrelevant.
Yeah. I think sometimes if that's a cop out, because that's the easy way to deal with it. Just preach.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do any work to do that.
Right.
You pass the responsibility off to God for helping the family.
Yeah.
When they're coming to hear you for direction.
Right. Yes. I still remember that one funeral where the young man killed his mom.
Yeah.
And you got up and addressed the tension in that room, because it was right there.
Yeah, it was there.
It was there. And it was kind of smooth after that sermon was over, because that was the question in the room, was why would this boy do this, and why would God allow these things to happen? And it is a tightrope now.
Yeah. Oh,
it's a tightrope, because if you say the wrong thing,
I felt like I was walking on hot coals, boy.
Yeah.
But it worked.
It did.
It worked.
It did.
Yeah.
If you rely on the word of God, preachers, listen to me. If you rely on the word of God to do it, he'll do it with you.
But I think it all goes back to tradition. I think, we haven't been taught that. So you just kind of go for what you know when you get in that kind of situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to voice your grief.
Yeah.
In a responsive way, not a reactive way.
Right.
And you can't voice it to everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
You should voice it to someone who can help you with the conversation.
Right.
Because you'll come away kind of upset if somebody says something crazy like, "You're not over that yet?"
And I think now, you feel extra, your heart goes out to people that have lost loved ones during COVID, because you can't even have the traditional gatherings and, family over and coming from out of town. You can't, that makes it 20 times harder.
I've had to counsel people during this COVID season that have lost 5 family members in 1 month.
Yeah.
In 1 month. One person I had to counsel, they lost 2 family members in the same day.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
So you have to know the helpful words. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. Right.
And their biblical principles. You have to, that word will work if you'll use it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So over the years, Bishop, have you had preachers ask you, that have observed how we do funerals and everything, have you had preachers ask you to try to gain wisdom on how to navigate that whole season? When they're
all the way from teaching them how to do eulogies to preachers calling me on a Friday night when they got to do a funeral on Saturday morning from around the country. Evans, what you think I should do?
Yeah. And
I ask them to tell me about the person.
Right.
And I say, did you consider so-and-so? Because I don't want to say, dummy, why don't you do this? I said, have you considered so-and-so? Oh yeah, that'll work. Yeah. Now, how would you do that? Because they have no idea. Yeah. So you end up giving them the preaching points. I give you the hanger, but you got to put the clothes on it. All right.
Right. Like, I ain't gonna do all the work.
Right. Yeah. You actually have you haven't done it in years. You did it in minister's class, how to do a funeral. We have it written now. I have to find it. It's on my computer somewhere.
Yeah.
That might be a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
We got a few minutes left. A lot of people are asking some of the same questions that we answered earlier.
Okay.
About how to move on, how to deal with the kind of general things. I suggest if you came in late, go back and watch from the beginning. We had one question that was good. It's about how can you be there for people who weren't there for you when you were grieving? It's
hard.
Woo!
It's hard. And anybody says it's not is lying.
You gotta be mature for real.
It's hard. It's hard when someone who should have been there is not there, and then they expect you to be there when they're going through.
Yep.
It's hard, and you go through the motions, and you do it transactionally rather than relationally.
So, Bishop, that takes maturity for real.
Oh yeah.
For real.
But I've done it, and then when I walk out the house, cussed all the way to the car. Just cuss, I'm like, Lord, where'd that come from? Just mad,
Yeah. Sonia talked about she likes to voice her fear, but doesn't feel like being a burden. I think sometimes we push away the help that God gives us sometimes.
Sure.
You know,
I think if you're just not used to talking to people, if you're not used to really being vulnerable, I think it's easy to kind of just go in your cave and be like, I'm not going to bother them with my trouble. You know what I'm saying?
And I think this thing about time and grief, there's really two types of grief: the grief that immobilizes you, and what I call functional grief. So, you don't get over your mom, your brother, your sister, your grandpa, grandmom, even though you're back to work. You're functioning in your grief.
Yeah.
And there is the difference in the way people mourn. Mourning is nothing but an expression of grief.
Right.
And the stronger you are spiritually or mature as you use, Reverend Prescott, the more manageable the grief is, even though to the one that's wearing the grief, it feels unmanageable at the time.
Right. But I think that adds to people thinking you don't need anything because look,
absolutely,
you look fine. You know what I'm saying?
But I think, y'all tell me if I'm wrong, I think that perception is built long before you start grieving for anything.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Wow, this was good. It's almost 8 o'clock, and we're going to do part 2 in December. I think that's going to be December the 10th. December 10th at 7 o'clock. Back to talk about it some more. Bishop, any parting words you want to give to everybody?
Well, I think that we all need to remember that God has given us a gift called grief. And the way in which you express that grief is your mourning. And the relationship with God changes mourning from a weakness into a strength. Yeah. Why? Because we have the hope in Christ Jesus that at the end, we know we're going to be all right because he is a very present help in time of trouble. Have to kind of be able to self-analyze that, yes, I'm shocked. I'm in denial. I got pain. I felt some guilt. I'm angry. I'm bargaining with God. And then I get depressed. And if I'm not aware, I won't know depression is a possible turning point. That depression signals, okay, I've hit the basement. I'm getting ready to come back up.
Yeah. And
then we start to recount good things and start working through the grief. Yeah. And the whole point of the grief is to get us to acceptance and hope once again. So you got to be aware of when, you're angry and when you're feeling physical pain and when, you're upset for what doesn't look like an apparent reason, but you really do know the reason. Because I think grief is silently fueled. I think you can wake up perfectly fine and that fuel will send you into anger or sadness or tears. And if you're not aware, okay, I'm grieving. Okay, this is normal. Especially people telling you it's not normal. I'm normal. And then, sometimes sounds come out of you that are unusual, which is the sound of grief. The sound of mourning, it's anguish. All those things are supposed to come out of you because God is trying to get us from shock to acceptance, from denial to hope. That's what he's trying to do.
Right. So basically, we shouldn't judge our feelings, basically.
No. And don't let any fool in the spirit tell you after the month that, ask you a dumb question. Are you not over that yet? Your faith needs to be stronger. My faith is fine. I'm hurt.
Yeah.
Right. That's good stuff.
That's good stuff. We're putting in the comment section the link to your series on Your Heart Will Beat Again.
Oh yeah, My Heart Will Beat Again. Yeah.
So that was good.
Yeah. Go on YouTube and the link is in the comment section.
Yeah.
Click on that. It'll take you to the. Sorry.
The timing of God was crazy on that.
Yeah, it was.
So we didn't know we were going into a COVID season.
Right.
So we did it in February during Valentine's month. So, you know, that's what keyed it was Valentine's Day. I'm like, okay, my heart will beat again.
Yeah. Yeah. It ran through the pandemic, especially the beginning part when all the deaths and stuff were going on. It just, it was good.
They ought to get that. It'll help.
Yeah. Click on the link in the bio. It'll take you right to YouTube to the playlist, and you'll have all the lessons there. All right, y'all. God bless y'all. I got to pass these. See y'all later. Bye.
All right. Thank you. See you guys later.